Greetings, beautiful friends. My name is David McLeod, and I am your Life Mastery Coach. Welcome to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. As you can see by my background, I am not in my usual location. I had some technical challenges that forced me to use a different computer in a different room, and I hope this isn't too distracting for you. But anyway, here we are. Today, we are going to be embarking on episode number 195, which we're calling Expectations versus Aspirations. And you may have heard the expression that expectation is the mother of frustration or the mother of disappointment. Well, if you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. The more attached you are to a particular outcome or result, the more disappointment you will tend to feel if that outcome or result doesn't come to pass. So I take it even a step further. Anytime you feel that energy of disappointment in your body, there's a really good chance that there was some attachment you had to some outcome beforehand, and that outcome didn't come to pass. So if you do a little bit of tracing, you can usually figure out that maybe what you wanted is what was causing the disappointment in the first place. Now, interestingly, if you have a particular objective in mind and you can release your attachment to a particular outcome, what you're actually doing is setting an intention for that objective rather than creating an expectation. And in effect, you are preparing an aspiration, a desire, a hope in your heart and mind, and this produces a whole different feeling in your body. It's a more invitational and welcoming energy, which allows the universe to deliver what it believes you want in its own way and in its own time. So in order to make this episode work, I've invited an author, personal development trainer, international speaker, and life coach to join us. After serving for many years as a podiatrist, she was attracted to the world of coaching through her own journey of claiming the freedom to be herself. She wrote a book about that very topic, by the way. After completing her life coaching certification, she also became a licensed trainer for the programs Zest for Life and Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And she is just an amazing bubble of light and love. And I want you to please welcome back my good friend, Azmina Jiwa, to share her wisdom on today's topic. Hello, Azmina. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining me again. I'm sorry about all the technical glitches, but thank you for being patient with me.
That happens. This is technology for us, but we are here now. And thank you very much.
And it's something like this always seems to happen whenever I have one of these somewhat controversial topics. Could it be that I had an expectation that things were going to go just right? Could it be that I created some kind of, I don't know, energy that made things, flip upside down? Who knows?
Who knows? That's right. And I had an expectation because I'm not friendly with technology, I'm afraid. I always say that, but yet I always manage. So I had an expectation that something will go wrong. So I thought, have I done something wrong? And I kept going backwards and forwards to the link.
Oh, I know. Well, yeah. And unfortunately, because you live in the UK, I don't have a direct access to your phone, so I couldn't call you and let you know. I was going to come on Facebook and just send you a message, but I thought, oh, what the hell? I'm just going to try this other computer and see if I can get it working. So anyway, here we are.
Okay. Here we are. Yes.
Here we are. And it's so good to see you again. I think it's been about a year and a half or so since the last time we spoke. And so how are you doing?
Yes, I'm very well, doing really good. And when you asked me to come on the show on this, I thought, okay, what subject? We've covered this, and you covered so many subjects when I looked at all your episodes, and then this just came to my mind. So it's not something that I have really talked about before, but I thought it's so interesting because really a lot of us, we know a lot about being in the flow of life, and we know about law of attraction. We've talked about all those things, but often I don't think we realize that a lot of our hurdles or our resistances or our outcomes, come from having these expectations, just as you said earlier, having expectations and then being disappointed. But not a lot of times we don't know that we had that expectation. And so I thought, yeah, that's interesting way of looking at things, and let's, let me visit that as well. And
Right.
then you come up with great description about it as well. So let's see.
Oh yeah, but you helped
Yeah.
with that. So yeah, thank you very
Yes.
much for that. Yeah, you're right. And I have talked about a lot of different topics on my show, and I'm always looking. I mean, I don't care if we happen to use the same topic again with a different guest or in a different perspective, because there's always some amazing wisdom that comes out in these programs. And speaking of which, I just want to say thank you to all the people who are here on the live presentation. Thank you for showing up. You'll notice that there's a public chat area there. If you have comments or questions that you'd like to share with us as we go, please feel free to type them in there, and we'll do our best to answer your questions or respond to your comments as we go. So, Azmina, let me ask you a personal question. This is how I always tend to start. You know that. Can you think of a time, maybe in the recent past or maybe even in the further past, doesn't matter, when you had a really strong expectation about something and it didn't turn out the way you wanted? Just describe that experience a little bit and what it was all about for you.
Yes. So yes, exactly. I was thinking about this, and I thought, yes, my very first kind of thinking it. Let me say, the right word wasn't coming just now. But yes, the first thing that I thought of when you asked me that, and also I was thinking about that, reflecting back, really in my very early days when I got married, and I guess having been brought up in a certain culture where as a woman you are there to serve your family and your husband, and so I had that expectation of myself of having to be this good wife, this wife that really follows what the husband wants rather than voicing what I wanted. And what that led me to become, which on hindsight is somebody who was very timid, was scared to voice my opinions. That led me to be very miserable, also led me to live in a kind of a fearful life, because then I was fearing judgment, because at a deep level, I wanted to express myself. And I think I truly believe, and I've talked about this before, that we are all born to express our potential. And when we don't, when we hide it and we are scared, we are not expressing ourselves. And that was, again, at the time, I didn't quite realize that I was miserable, but it was as if it was the way of life it was supposed to be. So carried on living like that. And it's only now that I've gone through my 20 years of journey of what I call self-discovery that I realized that actually wasn't a very happy time. It was like a time of really being like a robot, just doing, just doing this, paying attention to that. The fear was there, but it was just became a way of living. And so it stopped me expressing myself. So that was like my own expectations of how I should be. And what I also later realized that was a lot of it was also my perception. I never challenged it to find out that maybe it isn't like that. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be like that. Maybe my husband wasn't somebody who wouldn't accept me as I am or would reject me. But it was a lot of it was my perceptions.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that I can kind of really remember that.
That's very, very interesting. And although I know you were brought up in a certain culture that's maybe different from mine, I can say that in my own way, I had similar kinds of experiences in my life. I didn't have the female version of that experience, but I think culture itself puts a lot of pressure upon us to behave in a particular way, to meet certain milestones, to do certain things, to achieve certain, all these things. You gotta go to school, you gotta get certain grades, you gotta get married, you gotta have kids, you gotta have a family, you gotta have a house, you gotta have 2.5 dogs, 2.5 cars and a couple of dogs. This is what we're told. And so many of us abide by those expectations that are put upon us. And then we try and live our lives according to that roadmap that's made up for us.
Yeah.
And then we discover, hey, wait a minute, at the end of the road. I'm here, I'm 40 years old, and I'm really not happy. This isn't really what I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
So, and then that's the one point I want to make. And the other point is, I think marriage or a relationship in general, it doesn't have to be a marriage, but in relationship in general, we tend to put expectations on our partners to fulfill our needs.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a recipe for disaster, because although our partners might want to fulfill some of our needs, they're not going to want to fill all of them. Yes. And they aren't qualified or capable to do it anyway. Sometimes we have to take care of that for ourselves. So, yeah, this whole thing about expectations, whether they come from outside of ourselves or whether we create them internally, they really have the same effect.
That's right.
They create
yes.
the same energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And also what that led, again, just going back to the story, what that led me to do was then blame the other person.
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
it's their fault because they should know. Often we say, well, why don't they know? They should know what I want.
Exactly.
They should know. And yeah, absolutely. And then there is either, you're not equal partners, or there is friction.
That's right. And that just makes everything a lot more unpleasant, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
There's another side of expectations that I've experienced, and I don't know if you've had this yourself, but sometimes you might go through a period in your life where a lot of your expectations seem to be met. You go through this period of time when, oh, I expected that and it came true. I expected that and it came true. So after a while, you come to another place where you kind of develop, you go to the next level and perhaps become someone who is entitled.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I deserve this because I'm so special and I'm so amazing, and I'm supposed to get whatever I want when I want it,
Yeah.
That's kind of the other side. That's the extreme of expectation, I think, is entitlement.
Yes.
So have you ever run into that yourself?
Not myself so much, but I've seen children being brought up that way a lot. And then, because again, likewise, with my childhood, it was expectation of women should behave this way. Then there are other children I've seen, and then they've grown up as adults, as these children have just been given everything. And so I asked for this, I expected this, I got it. And then it's entitlement. And that makes them, I think, again, leads you to unhappiness in life, because as adults, you don't have all those entitlements always everywhere.
Right.
And you've got to take responsibility for what you want and how to attract it in your life. And so, again, there's disappointments, there's unhappiness, and of course, the way the other people then look at you is, oh, he's arrogant,
arrogant or narcissistic or something like that. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So much of our this whole idea of what we're expecting, what we're entitled to, of course, it comes up as we're growing up and what we've heard and what we've experienced, and hence then we live our life as adults until we become conscious and then we start changing.
Right.
And then I think that's where then maybe the idea of aspiration comes in. That when I was expecting to be, or expected myself to be this humble serving wife, if I had aspired to at that time, I want to have this wonderful equal relationship. I want to be an equal partner. I want to be able to express myself and understand and help express my husband, or whoever has their partners. It would have been completely different to start off with. Yeah. So yeah.
This idea of expectation. I was just going to say, as you were talking, I noticed that we as coaches, part of what we do with our clients is we want them to feel good about themselves. We want them to expand and express, and we want them to expect the best. Isn't that interesting how we even use those words? We want to teach them how to expect the best, when in fact we're probably doing them a disservice by creating that sense of expectation within them. And really what we ought to be doing is teaching them how to invite, how to attract, how to take advantage of how the universe works in order to draw to yourself what your heart and soul truly wants. not so much what your ego mind wants. The ego mind wants everything, and it wants all the shiny toys and everything like that. But the heart and soul wants things that are more, well, are far more important, I think, and less tangible. You know, the heart and soul wants connection. The heart and soul wants love. The heart and soul wants partnership and connection. I've already mentioned connection. It wants all these things that have to do with, I think, reconnecting to the truth of who we really are.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what I think we all want, even though we may not express it that way.
Absolutely, yes. I think we are all looking for that. Whatever we do in life, I think ultimate goal is, if I do this, I get peace. If I do this, I get happiness. That's ultimately what we all want. And that connection. And again, I think it comes when we say we don't have expectations, we are just aspiring to what we want. I think we are in a much calmer state. We are more centered. We are more in the moment. And that's where I think that, listening to what does our soul and heart want? Because again, I never remember being asked when I was young by anybody, whether teachers or family, what do you feel? What do you want? How do you want it to be? It was always, you do this, or this is how it's done, or don't do this. And then we lose that connection with ourselves, because you mentioned the word connection. It's also that deeper connection with ourselves and other souls that are around us, and they're all there for a reason. So I think it's so important that we have that connection and have that aspiration that we keep connecting, instead of an expectation of what the other person should do or we should do in order to connect with each other.
It's interesting that you mentioned this idea of nobody ever asking you what you wanted, or what was really in your heart. I had the same experience, and I'm pretty sure that even in today's so-called advanced schools, that hasn't changed. I'm pretty sure that almost all of our schools today are more interested in pushing information into people rather than having them draw it out from themselves. That's part of the problem. We have completely inverted the meaning of education. Education means to draw out. And yet here we are, we're kind of cramming all this stuff into people, saying, you got to remember this, you got to be able to regurgitate it when it comes to the exam, And what are we really doing when we do that? We're preventing our children from experiencing the truth of who they are right from the get-go. And so, we kind of create a monster in our society by preventing people from expressing themselves as who they are from the moment they're born.
Yeah, that's so true. And don't we all? Well, I'm sure you have come across it. I'm sure some of our listeners must have as well. That when children are born, they are so connected. They are still connected to that who they are. And yes, and we don't explore that. The schools don't explore that. And I know, I'm hoping that I do sometimes see some schools having little programs, I think, where they are now they're making that little changes. But I think we have a way to go. We are really developing the left side of our brain, which is all needed, logic and knowledge and that. But also the right brain needs to be developed, which is the intuition. And that isn't given a chance. And
that's right.
Yeah, and again, going back to that childhood conditioning, even at home. Again, I know with our culture, if somebody came up, and I think it still happens a little bit when a child says, "Oh, I want to be a singer or a dancer," the parents will jump on them straight away and say, "Oh no, again, it's this expectation. I expect my child to be a doctor. I expect my child to be an accountant," and then they're pushed to who they are not. And I think we definitely change. We need parenting courses. We need the schools to really understand what is education exactly. What is that child development? Well, what is development? It's not just pouring in knowledge into them. And then when they come to a certain level, we call them GCSE over here in England. And oh my God, the pressure on the children to pass those exams, even if it's subjects that they are not completely interested in, is so great that if they don't get the marks, they're deemed failures.
Right.
So yeah, so those expectations of others, our children, put so much pressure on not just the parents themselves and the children.
Well, and look what happens to the children too. I mean, when they hear mommy and daddy saying, well, no, I expect you to be a doctor, or I expect you to be a lawyer, or I expect you to do this or whatever, even if they don't use those words exactly, what's the kid's first response? The kid is saying, oh, I love my mom and dad. I guess I have to do what they tell me because they probably know better than I do what this life is all about. And I guess it's time for me to give up my dream of being a singer, or a dancer, or an actor, or an architect, or whatever, and focus on becoming a doctor. I mean, I think we all go through that. Now, some people have the strength and the fortitude to say, no, I understand that's what you want. You know, they're wise enough at their young age. People say, I understand what you want, but that doesn't resonate for me, and I'm going to try this path instead. Yes. Or if they do happen to follow what mommy and daddy want, then what they end up doing is going a certain point along their lives, and who knows what's going to happen, because they're not happy. So they may get into drugs, they may get into alcohol, they become very unbearable to live with, they become, you know, violent with their partners, who knows, they commit crimes, they commit suicide. You know, if they're lucky, at some point during their life, maybe 30s or 40s, they'll just realize, I took a wrong turn because of what was expected of me by all these other people. I forgive them. I drop them. I don't care anymore. Now I'm going to choose my own path. And I promise, when I have kids, I'm not going to expect anything of them. And that's kind of what happens, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I tried that. I tried not expecting anything of my kids. I think that didn't work too well. On some level, I think we have to expect something. So what I tried to do is I tell my kids, I expect you to live to the maximum potential that you have within you. That's what I expect you to do.
Yeah. Yes.
And I invite you to choose your own path to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think. Yeah. If as parents we aspire, if we go back to expecting aspire, if we aspire our children to be who they are born to be,
right?
Then they'll follow that path and be able to express themselves, be much happier, and live a happier life ultimately, and hopefully not go into these habits of the things you talked about, the drug and the extreme suicide as well. Because you just can't handle that stress that comes with it, or with that living up to that expectation. And I'm so glad, because when I started changing and becoming conscious about myself and started this journey, my daughter was able to say to us, because she was following a certain path, but in her mind and heart she wanted to be a journalist. But she always thought that society and us would laugh at that choice. And so she didn't speak up. But as she saw me changing, she was able to voice what she wanted. So by the time she finished university, she was getting this job, which wouldn't have made her happy. And we were expecting her to take that job. And she came to us and said, I'm not going to take that job because I actually really want to be a journalist. And we welcomed her. We said, that's great. What do you need? What do you need to do? Well, how will you go that path?
Right.
And she's much happier, and she's flourishing. And so I'm so pleased that I recognized that, through my own journey. And then I realized that I wasn't actually being the best parent I was, because I was a very, very strict mother. And I had really restricted their expression of who they were, I think. And then when I realized, I also went to a course called Parents Link, and that taught me a lot of tools of parenting. And as I changed, she changed. She started feeling much more confident in life. And the result is that she is much, much happier. And she was able to choose the partner that she's with, her husband. Whereas I think, again, what happens is that we a lot of times choose partners who are going to fulfill our needs. we're not equal partners. We go for again. I'm sure we've all heard that sometimes we break up with one partner, we go with somebody else, and it turns out to be exactly the same person in a different body.
Yeah, right.
So we tend to attract that all the time until we make a change in ourselves. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Zulobia says, I agree with you, Azmina.
Thank you,
for
Zulobia.
that.
And thank you for
Well,
participating.
and I suspect that a lot of people agree with that, because this is what happens. This is life, isn't it? This is what we do to each other, And I think that, and part of the problem is, we all come into this world as brand new shining lights of joy and love, and then slowly get conditioned so that our natural divine spirituality seems to get kind of hidden away by this growing ego mind. And then our ego mind takes over. And for a lot of us, it takes over for much of the rest of our lives, unless we happen to have enough awareness to recognize that something is not working. Now, that doesn't mean we all become super enlightened and grow to the level where we no longer have an ego mind. Some of us do. I wish I were one of them. I'm not. I'm still working on it. But it's, there are some people who know how to live and have transcended their ego mind. Those are the people we really ought to be listening to. Those are the people that we need to be inviting into our lives to help us learn how to quiet our own ego minds so that we don't let it run the show and ruin everything. Right? And so that's part of what growth is all about. So.
Yeah. I think that, yes, the ego mind, but also I think there is a place for ego. Would you say there is also a place for ego as a kind of a driver? And then we need to let go of that ego. It's like a fuel or a driver. It gets us to a certain point. Say, for example, people who are who take a stand, they get angry about something. So that's in a kind of a sense, it's their ego, or maybe even their values and their principles, and something is very not going, it's very wrong, and they take a stand about something, and then they go out and march. And I think that's I think that's a little bit of the ego that's required, because I think the whole reason that we do have the ego from the time I think we're born, it has a place. But exactly as you described, what happens then is that if we completely lose that connection, then we're completely ruled by our ego. And we don't recognize it just, for what it's supposed to be. And then we need, so once the person has realized they've kind of used up their fuel and they're out there marching for some principles, then I think it's going back to the connection. I believe this is a value that's worth fighting for, or it's standing up for. So I think there is a little, some kind of a place for it, but absolutely not to live your whole life just by ego.
Right, I agree. I think, so I always call it the ego mind, as opposed to just the ego, because to me, it's a separate entity. And the ego mind, in my view, has one job, and that is to keep me safe. And so everything it does with the objective of keeping me safe, but it may do it because it imagines risk where none exists. And it's basing its judgment that there's risk on past events that have a similar kind of energy associated with them. And so, the ego mind says, oh, no, you can't do that, because remember the last time you got embarrassed by these people because they thought you were being silly or something. And so the ego is going to try and shut you down from doing that, because the ego doesn't want to have you experience that hurt. So in a sense, the ego is performing a very valuable purpose. It's helping to keep us safe. It's helping us to make our way through the physical world. And in that sense, it's great. And at the same time, though, you talked about people getting angry enough that they want to go out and march. yeah, there might be some ego involved there. Some people want to go out and march just because they want to be seen as somebody who has a social justice kind of perspective. They're not doing it because they truly believe necessarily, but they're doing it because they want to create an image of themselves in a certain way. Now, that's when the ego has really taken over. But you can still have a very spiritual approach and say, you know, this is just plain wrong. I'm now taking a stand. And even though it may look like anger, it may not be fueled by ego. It may be fueled by a spiritual desire to create some good in the world.
Mm.
That's kind of how I see it. And, you know, I was thinking about this. The word expectation actually relates to the ego, and aspiration relates to the spirit. So I think you kind of nailed it when you picked those two words and made that the topic of this.
Mm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And yeah, and I think, yeah, I see the difference when you say the ego mind. And of course it's there to keep us safe, but we are not recognizing from past experience that this is not danger, and that is what then gets us into trouble or unhappiness or whatever, because then we're going to fight. Well, we're going to fight and flight, but yet we don't do either. We just freeze. Yeah. Because say like we are in a relationship where things are not working out, but you don't speak up. I mean, fighting to me would be in that scenario would be to speak up and speak my mind in the kindest way I can, you know, not in an aggressive way, but in expressing my feelings rather than you doing this, you doing that. And so that keeps me from keeps me safe but not happy, keeps me in my comfort zone but not happy. And then on the other hand, flight. You're too scared to fly, too scared to get out of the situation, because then it's again, you know, about all the what ifs. What if I can't survive? What if I can't? What if I don't earn enough money? This is better than being out there. But and so again, yeah, we're kind of frozen in that state of ego mind, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, as you were speaking, I was thinking of one of the teachings of Jesus. He used to teach to turn the other cheek, right? If a man slaps you on one cheek, give him the other cheek also, I believe is how he said it. But he didn't say, keep turning the cheek when the man hits you. You know, at some point, you are perfectly allowed to defend yourself. Obviously, you don't want to be aggressive, like you said, and you know, try and hurt people. But at some point, hey, this has got to stop. So stop now, or else. You know, or maybe when you try to hit this cheek again, you're going to have a new surprise, you know. So I think that we all need to know that it's perfectly okay to protect what you are here in this physical body. It's perfectly okay to do that. But at the same time, when your ego is chattering, most of the time, there really is no danger. Mostly it's just false evidence appearing real, as you would say. And so I just wanted to bring that out. I also wanted to acknowledge Raquel. She made a couple of comments here, and I think I'd like to bring them into the conversation. First, she says, my parents didn't have expectations for me, but they also had no guidance or involvement. And I always felt kind of alone and a lack of encouragement in figuring it all out. I guess I had an expectation for support that wasn't there. Very good observation. Yeah, good self analysis there.
Yes,
at least for me, the opposite of expectation was still difficult. So I think that's a really good point. And yes, I think I experienced a little bit of that as a parent with my own kids, trying to figure out how not to have expectations, but at the same time, you know, guide them.
Yeah.
How would you respond to that?
Yes, I think that's what I learned also when my children were in their like 16, 17 teens, when they would go and explore and wanted to go to parties and things like that. I think by that time I'd also learned to allow them to be. So I would kind of say to them, this is what I think. This is what the danger is out there. You know, you go out there, be careful with your drink. Somebody could put something in there, so don't leave it around. This is what alcohol does to you. This is what drugs do to you. And it's your life. And I felt what that does, and I still advise that actually to quite a lot of parents when they're saying they're struggling with teenagers, because again, they're trying to impose, they have expectations, they're trying to impose their ideas on the children and not allowing them to go out and explore their world. And so, I just lost my thread. And then of course there is a rebellion within the house. And yes, so what I was going to say is, so then what happens? But I feel that when you say, okay, then it's your life, they, I think, take responsibility. Then they have to think, okay, so what shall I do? What's the best thing to do? And start making hopefully right choices. But I think all the time we impose, and especially when parents say, no, you can't do this, without explaining or without and saying, this is what I feel, but you can do. The child's mind is, why are they telling me not to do this? I'm going to show them. And so I will do. And I think then they go and do more of what we don't want them to do, instead of thinking for themselves and taking that ownership. Now I have to, it's my life. I have to think about it. And I think that, again, maybe it allows them to go into their intuition, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, we tell kids it's their life, and then we set bad examples too. I remember, well, my parents both smoked, and they both told me not to smoke.
Okay.
My parents drank, and they both told me not to drink. The other thing that my mom would say is, don't do as I do as I say, which that just irritated the hell out of me. And then occasionally she would say to me, and she would, it was so really, really twisted. Don't do as I say, do as I do. It was all mixed messages all over the place. And this is what kids of my age had to deal with. And I suppose there's still today mixed messages. But embedded in those messages are the expectations that we have of our kids. We don't necessarily say, I expect, but we say by our words that we are expecting something.
That's right. Yes. Our words, our actions. So how did you, let me ask you, David, how did you, so when they were smoking, they were telling you not to, what was your kind of thinking at that time? What behavior did that?
Well, do you want me to be polite about it? Let's just say I had some choice words for them, although I didn't necessarily say them to their face. And furthermore, I didn't abide by their rules. I mean, I started smoking when I was about 9 years old. Wow. That was my first cigarette. I actually started smoking more regularly when I was 13. And I smoked for 3 years behind their back before I finally had the courage to come up and say, look, I'm 16 years old. Can I have permission to smoke in the house? They finally relented. Now, the drinking part, that was a little bit different. Even back in my day, you couldn't just go anywhere and get a drink. Alcohol was a little harder to come by. But I did manage, I would skim off my dad's supply, and I was drinking. I mean, thank God I got the sense in my head to quit both of those very, very bad habits. And I quit I quit the smoking before my kids were old enough to really know anything about that. And I quit the drinking when I was, in 2001. So my kids were already in the 15, 16-year-old time range at that point. But the point I'm trying to make is I rebelled. I refused. I had done so many things that they had wanted me to do in my life. I said, this is one thing I'm choosing for myself. It was a stupid choice, no question about it. But that's what I did. It's like you said, well, you tell me I can't do it. Well, I'm going to show you.
Yeah. You become more rebellious, and that's
right.
And that's again that ego mind, isn't it? Yeah. Because again, you're not going back to, okay, what do I want? It's the ego mind. I'm going to show them I'm big, going to be greater than them or bigger than them or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And rebelliousness, I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. I think, as I think about it now, all of us have this deep desire inside to fully experience and express ourselves truly. And so it's only going to look like rebellion to somebody who's trying to stop us from doing that.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
See? And I think that what we need to do is, all of us, we need to find that part of ourselves that really, really yearns to be expressed in an authentic way, and try and bring that forward in our own lives, and don't care what anybody says or thinks or does about it. Now, obviously, you have to temper that. I mean, I don't want anybody to be allowed to do things that might hurt someone else or violate their rights or anything like that. That's a no-no, period, end of sentence.
Yeah.
But you can still learn to fully express yourself without causing harm to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you can learn to express yourself in a way that is compassionate and loving to everyone around you. And that just takes practice.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's yeah, you don't want to live life by trampling on other people. And that also reminds me, you know, if when we do express ourselves and if somebody doesn't like it, then it's really their responsibility. It's, you know, we sometimes take on that responsibility and say, oh, I'll hurt them if I speak my truth, or, you know, whatever we do. And that then, well, where does that lead to?
Well, I think it's obvious. I mean, all you got to do is look at the culture we have today, especially in the US, and possibly in Britain as well, this liberal culture that we've created where your feelings get hurt and somehow it's my fault. You know, where did that start? I mean, that's pretty new. That's only been, I'd say, 10 to 15 years. All of that suddenly came out. I don't know why that is, but no, I'm not responsible for your feelings.
Yeah.
I'm not going to deliberately try and hurt you by my words, but I'm not going to withhold my words just because you might get upset about them.
Yes.
You know, that's your problem.
Yeah.
And so we have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
We basically have to grow up, is what I think.
Well, I guess that's the point of life, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we come, and why have we had certain experiences where then we are undoing a lot of that conditioning? You know, we came, we knew who we were, and then we lost it. And now we are trying to find ourselves. I guess that's the whole point of maybe coming in this life. To experience it. The way I have kind of described it sometimes is that we are on this roller coaster, which goes ups and downs and goes in circles. And we have actually come to experience all that. And sometimes when you're going in circles or you're going down on that roller coaster, it's not a very nice experience, but yet we go through it. And if somebody said to us, oh, you know, the queue for the roller coaster is too long, I'll just take you from this end of the queue to the end of the queue and imagine you've done it. We're probably not going to agree. but
that's a great idea.
While we are in this life, we are like, oh, this shouldn't happen, and why did this happen to me? Rather than be in the flow. And I think when we don't have these expectations, I think we are much, much more in the flow. And, you know, we've talked about expectations of ourselves and people, and we have expectations of situations and circumstances, don't we? We end up somewhere. Simple one is a traffic jam. And we are like, why does this happen? And it's the government's fault. And, you know, it's that person's fault, whoever had stopped the traffic or whatever it is. We're there in the blame mode and agitated and frustrated. Whereas if we expect that these things happen, it's fine. What would we do? Relax.
Right. Well, I mean, just this morning, well, for me, it's this morning. For you, I know it's in the evening. We had a situation in which technology chose not to function the way we expected. And I was getting frustrated. And I said, oh, my God, Azmina's going to be worried about me. Now, what am I going to do? So, you know, we just have to deal with the situation and say, okay, here's what I can do. Well, this will work for today, and I'll fix the problem for next time. Yeah. Thankfully, it worked.
It
you know?
worked. Just I think on the dot of 6 probably just worked.
Yeah, it was very
And the
close.
same thing with me. Yes, I was thinking. First, I thought, oh my God, maybe something's happened to him because I'm sure he couldn't have. Then, did he make a mistake in the time? Because I think your time changed recently. Ours changed
Right.
a few weeks ago. I said, is that a mistake? And then my mind was, and then I thought, no, just breathe, center yourself. I had to calm myself down because I thought I'll forget what the topic is, and I really had to bring. And that's again these kind of tools we have to learn, because we'll get into that. That's part of
Right.
life, right? And then we have this tool of bringing back to our center, back to our intuition. And I just had to check in and say, okay, what could have happened? Nothing. Let me just wait and just let whatever's supposed to unfold. And so that helps to just bring you back to that connection we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great practice. Anytime we have an expectation, I think the first step, of course, is to be aware. Oh yeah, I see. I have an expectation of such and such and such and such. Whether it's an expectation of a person or yourself or a situation, doesn't matter. If you can get to that awareness, you can ask yourself, is this a valid expectation? Is this a legitimate thing for me to be expecting? And if it is, well, then how can you deal with it and bring it about in such a way that it actually works for you? But if it's not, then can you release it? Can you just simply release the expectation altogether and allow the universe to deliver as it wants to deliver?
Yes, yeah, that's true.
I
Because
think that one of the most powerful tools that I know of is to say, okay, here's what I want, and I put it in your hands. Universe, thank you so much, and just forget about it.
Yeah. Yes, don't hold on to the outcome. Just let it flow.
That's right.
In whatever ways, and a lot of times it flows in probably a lot better than what we even thought. Right. And by having an expectation, we box it in. It didn't happen. It hasn't happened because we can't see that it's happening. Yeah. Right. And I think we lose also holding on to outcomes, and I think we lose the sense of adventure. We lose the sense of expansion and of our growth and learning, because we're kind of in this box, aren't we? I'm going to a party. I expect this party to be a certain way, and then it isn't. It isn't what you expected. But maybe if you just could flow into it and say, okay, what can I learn from it? What can be an adventure here today? It isn't how I wanted it. Or even going out for a walk, again, in the West, I think we have this habit of saying, oh, it's a lousy day. Even in the news, if it's a rainy day, or if they use the negative word rather than just stating it's going to be a rainy day. And straight away our mind is like, it's a horrible day. And I've tried to change that. I try and say, no, it's actually a lovely, great day. Maybe we can light some candles today. Because in the sunlight, you don't see the candlelight so much. And I do like candles. So I think we lose that sense of, or even going out in the rain, it pours down. But sometimes if you just let loose in that lovely rainfall, you can actually have a nice experience.
Exactly. Yeah. My dog, Apollo, has been a great teacher in that regard. Because my dog will go out. He doesn't care about the weather at all. He loves it no matter what the weather is. When we go for a walk, he's excited. He's the same level of excited every time we go for a walk. Even if I just got home from a walk, and he's just like that. And I have learned so much from him. I said, okay, this is another adventure for Apollo. Whether it's raining, snowing, blowing wind, dust, hurricane, who cares? Whatever it is, it's an opportunity for me to just have that same level of excitement with him. And so what you said just reminded me of another friend of mine has this great question that she asks herself, no matter what the situation is. She'll say, so what is possible right now? And she might come up with an answer, and then she'll say, and what else is possible? So no matter what the situation is, so if you're stuck in a traffic jam, you could say, what is possible right now? Or if you can, I won't say that you're in an argument with somebody, because that might not be the best time to ask that question. But if you are aware enough to stay calm and connected, you could ask yourself, what is possible right now, even as I'm facing this intense anger from my partner? What is possible?
Yeah.
I mean, it would take a great deal of discipline, I think, to get to that stage. It's pretty hard to stand in the face of someone else's anger and remain calm. That takes work.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. But I think also it gives us some tools to, when we are reflecting on it, to say, okay, this is what I could ask myself. Also, in my same token, I use the words, what's the opportunity here?
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a good one
similar,
too.
right? What's the
Yeah.
or what's the learning here?
Yeah.
And that also opens up those several layers of what it could be, what is possible, what is possible. And of course, we're even on hindsight, when we are reflecting and then we pose on these questions, which at the time when something's happening, we may not be able to. At least it allows us to have a different behavior the next time something like that happens, I think. So we've kind of grown by asking those questions, haven't we? That's we kind of grow and change our behavior and lead to much happier.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this idea of reflection. If I look back on an event, so let's say something really unpleasant happened, and you got involved in a car accident, or maybe not that bad, but you have an argument with your partner or whatever. After you calm down and just kind of get grounded into yourself, a really powerful question you can ask yourself is this: for what purpose did I invite that into my life? Now, there's a couple of powerful things happening here, because the first thing you're noticing, you're taking responsibility for having created the situation in the first place. Mm-hmm. Most people don't want to do that. Most people would rather point the finger and say it was that person's fault, or it was this or that or the other thing. Most people don't want to say, well, it was my fault. Well, forget about fault. Fault is one of those negative words that really most people don't want to hear. So instead of thinking about fault, think about in what way am I responsible for this event? What did I do to contribute? And the powerful question for me is, for what purpose did I invite that into my life? And then just sit and wait and see what happens. See what you get out of that. I mean, I had a situation like that where I got into an altercation with a man who ended up giving me a black eye. And after I calmed down and got over the ego mind fantasies of how I was going to get even with the guy and all the rest of it, I was able to get back to it. And I looked in the mirror and I said, what is this trying to tell me? What purpose did I invite this in? And the answer just kind of dropped right in like a truth bomb on my heart. And it said, when you remove the filters from your own eyes, you'll be able to see more clearly. Whoa.
Okay.
In other words, I was kind of inviting something into my universe that allowed me to see things more clearly. Because I was actually asking the universe for clarity and relief from confusion. And that's kind of how it happened. Now, maybe there were gentler messages that came along the way and I wasn't paying attention to them. And maybe this is what the universe decided to do to escalate, so I would start paying attention to the answers that I was asking for. So it's always interesting to me, no matter what the situation might be, when I ask myself that question, there's almost always a powerful, powerful learning here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's really, really interesting. So are you then saying that when an event presents to us, which is something like this, which we are not obviously wasn't a pleasant one, that the universe answered in that particular way, and then with us asking those questions, then we would the answer got revealed.
That's what I believe.
That's what
I believe.
Yeah,
I think the universe is a very, very amazing engine of creation, right? And each of us is a creative spark. We know how to activate that engine of creation. We know how to draw into our lives, even if we don't consciously understand the mechanism. We know how to draw into our lives that which we truly want. The problem is sometimes, especially if we're busy and we got lots of stuff going on, we may not notice all the gentle answers that are coming to us, right? Something that we've asked for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened to me. I hadn't been paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
So the universe might start escalating the energy. And who knows, you might get like a bump in your path, like I did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that actually reminds me, because we have, like the faith that I am in, the Ismaili. It's a sect of a Muslim faith called Ismaili Muslim, Shia Ismaili Muslims, and we have a living guide, and he always says, we're told that say thank you, be grateful, no matter what happens, no matter what befalls on you.
Yep.
So yeah, so with that gratitude, expression of gratitude, then you would say, okay, there is a good reason why this happened, and why did I invite that? Just like you say, David.
Right.
Yeah, and
I just want to acknowledge Zulobia asked a great question here, and I don't think we've talked a lot about aspirations here, although we have circumferentially we've covered it. But she's asking, is self-expectation actually another term for aspiration? And I know my answer to that, but what do you say?
I would say no, and maybe yes. I don't know. To me, I was distinguishing it as expectation is that like the ego mind kind of thing, whereas aspiration is what does my heart and soul want. Right. And so then you're guided to that. You listen to your inner self, and then you are on kind of flow with life. Whereas the expectations would be stuck, frozen rather than fighting, frozen, not experiencing, not being open, and not kind of having a happier life. In other words. Right. So that's what I would, but yeah, let's hear your expression of it, David.
Oh, I agree with that. I think the aspiration side of it has to do with allowing the heart and soul to communicate its message to our physical self, I guess. And this is why we have to go into things like meditation and prayer and stuff like that in order to be able to commune with that aspect of our being. Because if we don't do that, then mostly the ego is going to be running the show, and we will get caught up in the notion of expectation. So I think what we've really been talking about here, and we've said it a few times, is this idea of being attached to a particular outcome. And that ultimately is expectation. That's what expectation really is, that a particular outcome is going to transpire. So the question is, and Azmina, I'm going to ask you to answer this question. How do we release our attachment to an outcome so that we can simply put the desire out there and allow the universe to deliver?
I would say then it's about trusting that the timing is not up to me, and allowing it to come in whatever ways it will come, being open to whatever comes. It may come in form of a person who says something to you, or a book, or some kind of an experience. So it's about being open and making that connections of, this, I had this aspiration, this intention, this ask for it, and now this. So, sometimes what we call the coincidences. So they are like coincidences, not coincidence. So it's putting, the things they're putting to this, so being open to it. And to me, I think the biggest one is trusting, because when I trust, then I'm not constantly, but it isn't happening. It isn't happening. And all the time it isn't happening. Well, it isn't going to happen, because that's exactly what I'm not open to looking for whatever path that it's leading me to.
Right.
Does that answer?
Yeah, that's good. I like that. But I think you're talking more about inviting things like peace and love and all that kind of stuff into your life. What if you really want something physical and concrete? You want a new house, you want an airplane, you want $5 million in your bank account. What if you want something like that and it feels like a genuine desire because it fulfills some other kind of need? I don't know what that might be. How do you present that to the universe as a desire and release the attachment to the outcome? Because now you kind of have described a particular outcome.
I think, to me, I would still go back to trusting that it is, because it came. So, okay. So this is where I would maybe distinguish a little bit. Is it my ego or is it my heart's desire? So my ego would be, because that person has got that house, I want it. I want to show them. And then I think it would be a different thing. But if I,
right,
but so if I want a particular type of house because it's going to enhance me, that environment is going to be making me be more of who I am, then I would trust that it is happening. And then, of course, there are tools that I do use sometimes, is visualize in my mind's eye that it is there, feel it, and again, just let it go. That, you know, I will arrive at it. And I can actually give an example of my husband always wanted a big house, and I always wanted a house with a swimming pool. And we have that, we have that in our life.
You have a big house with an indoor swimming pool.
I do. Thank you, God.
That's
or thank you, universe, or whatever, divine. Yeah. So I've experienced few other things in my life. When I became a trainer, and I was finding marketing and, you know, getting people quite hard, and I didn't actually want to put effort into it, and I didn't have to, because I was doing this because it was my passion, not as a job that I have to earn money. And so one day I just said, oh, give me ready-made audience. I don't want to, you know, just give me ready-made audiences. And I don't know from where or how, and I let it go. I forgot about it. And how and where, I have no idea. But I suddenly noticed Dr. Susan Jeffers' website. I noticed she wants trainers. I had learned to take action by that time. If I had put my fear and my ego, oh no, who am I to do this? Why should she accept it? If I'd done that, I wouldn't have got. But I applied and I became a trainer, and that was just wishing that from my heart, and that was it. Just forgotten about it.
Yeah,
you know.
Beautiful.
So that was my couple of
Azmina, I hate to say it, but we've gone a little over our time, and I mean, it's great. It's been a fabulous conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I'm wondering if there's any final words you'd like to say to, you know, the people who are here on the live show and to the people watching the recording before I close out.
Yes. So going back to the title, I would say be aware of your expectations, and maybe turn it around into, instead of that, what is my aspiration? What is it that my heart and soul really wants? Because my expectation is coming from ego mind or my conditioning, but I am here for me, my life, and my own happiness. And what is it that I'm aspiring to have or be, instead of expectation, and then let go of the outcome.
Right. Well, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being here today, Azmina. I've just really enjoyed our conversation, and it's been great. Thank you so much.
And thank you. It's been such a pleasure to have been invited again to converse with you, and it's been, you know, a lovely flow. So thank you very, very much, and thank you to all the listeners there.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you to all of you for watching today's program. Remember, you can catch recordings of this and all my other previous shows on my website at lifemasterytv.com. That's life-mastery-tv.com. I truly hope you enjoyed this presentation. In a few hours, you're probably going to receive an email with a link to a survey page. I really would appreciate it if you could just give us a survey, give us a 4 or 5 star review. Those always help to spread the word. And finally, I'm going to ask you to please remember to practice the life mastery mantra on a daily basis. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, thank you so much for being here. My name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you all next time right here on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye.
Thank you.